Over the past 40 years, which is pretty much my entire lifespan, we have seen a tripling of obesity rates in the United States and a doubling worldwide. The maps of the United States and their increasing obesity rates state by state are really impressive. Back in the 1980s, about 15% of adults were obese, and now 42% of adults are obese and 18% of children. During the same time period, we're also seeing a doubling of the rates of diabetes, increased rates of cancer, especially in young people, increased neurodegenerative diseases, and autoimmune diseases. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how these are all related to one organ system, your microbiome. And you may not think of that as an organ system, but as more and more studies come out, we're recognizing the important role of the microbiome, or those trillions of bacteria, fungi, and viruses that live in your intestines, and the role they play on your health. I'm Dr. Katrina Coulter. I'm an infectious disease specialist, and I make educational health videos. This is part of my series on health and the microbiome, and today we're going to focus on obesity. So we're going to talk about how we know the microbiome is related to obesity, the gut-brain connection, and dietary effects on the microbiome. If you stay tuned till the end, we'll also discuss some tips on what you can do to improve the health of your microbiome and hopefully help with your weight management. Don't forget to like or subscribe if you find this helpful, and also share it with friends, family, anyone that you think needs to know this knowledge. So let's get into obesity and the microbiome. Back in the early 2000s, scientists started studying the difference in stool composition of fat and skinny mice. So what they were noticing was that even though all the mice were fed the same diet, some were heavy and some were lean and some were pretty normal weight. So looking at the stool or the feces of the mice, they realized that there were differences in the composition of bacteria that were present in the obese mice versus the lean mice. Then scientists further studied this in humans, finding genetically identical twins that had differences in weight. So where there was an obese twin and a lean twin, and then transplanted their stool or their microbiome into mice whose microbiome had been wiped out. And what they found is that the obese human's microbiome into a mouse with no microbiome resulted in an obese mouse, and a lean twin's microbiome into a mouse with no microbiome resulted in a lean mouse. Or we were able to deduce from this that the composition of bacteria played a role in whether or not you were heavy or you were thin. So we have further discovered that there are trillions of different bacteria, and some that we have not even yet identified in the microbiome. But there are two major phyla, and these are going to be the Firmicutes and the Bacteroidetes. And I want to be very clear that this is in general. The ratio of Firmicutes to Bacteroidetes is higher, so more Firmicutes, less Bacteroidetes in obese mice and obese people. This is not the whole story, because repeat studies have not confidently confirmed that every single obese person has more Firmicutes and Bacteroidetes. So this is a complex interplay, but we'll say in general, we have noticed that. So what does that mean? The Firmicutes are a class of gram-positive bacteria. What the bacteria do in general in our colon and how they work for us is that they digest undigestible carbohydrates, they ferment them, and they turn them into short chain fatty acids. And these short chain fatty acids function as signaling molecules for our intestinal cells. So they tell our body what to do. And we found that the Firmicutes generally produce butyrate, the short chain fatty acid butyrate, while the Bacteroidetes primarily produce the short chain fatty acids propionate and acetate. And so these different short chain fatty acids have a little bit different role in signaling in our intestines. Let's move on now to what we call the gut-brain connection. This is the connection of our GI tract and what's going on in there to what's happening in our brain. And this occurs through the 10th cranial nerve, the vagus nerve, also known as the wandering nerve, because it kind of wanders all through the abdomen and innervates or sends signals to lots of different organs in the abdomen. So it's a two-way street. It has afferent and efferent pathways, meaning it's getting signals from the GI tract and sending them to the brain, and it's also sending signals from the brain down to the GI tract, and this is very important. So the vagus nerve is our gut-brain connection. And so what we have found is that a lot of our neurotransmitters that signal things in the brain are produced in the gut. And these are produced by our gastrointestinal cells, but they are signaled for production by these byproducts of the bacteria in our intestines. And so the short chain fatty acids are a perfect example of these signaling molecules. So let's introduce some important players. You don't have to remember this, there won't be a test. But the one that you've probably heard about recently a lot in the news is called GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1. And this is produced by intestinal cells as in response to short chain fatty acids. And what GLP-1 does is it signals our pancreas to release insulin, and it signals to our brain that we are full, and it slows transit through the gastrointestinal tract. So some other important players that are produced in the GI tract are leptin, and this is a satiety hormone that acts on the brain to say we're full, we don't need to eat anymore, and ghrelin, which is a hormone that does the opposite. It tells us we're hungry, let's get things going, let's go find some food. So the med school trick to remember this is ghrelin is happening when your stomach is growling. So why am I telling you all of this? Because these hormones work in a very elegant dance to help regulate how hungry we feel and how much calories we intake. And so when we eat food, our bacteria process the food, they stimulate the release of GLP-1. And now on the market are several GLP-1 agonists, such as Wegovy or Ozempic, that we are using for weight loss. So it stimulates a GLP-1, which then stimulates insulin release and leptin release and tells our body that we're full. So in obesity, we are finding that in addition to this changed ratio of firmicutes to bacteroidetes, that there also seems to be lower rates of GLP-1, and there seems to be decrease in the whole diversity of the microbiome. So what is causing these effects or these changes? And that's where our diet comes into play. So starting in the 1970s, we started producing a food category that you also may be hearing about now called ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods are foods that contain ingredients that you would not normally find in your kitchen. And so an easy way to know this is flip over the label on your packaged food and read the ingredients. And if you cannot recognize them, it's likely ultra-processed. So ultra-processed foods are often very low in fiber. They don't contain the phytonutrients that we would normally be getting from eating a whole food. And they do contain a lot of sugar and additives for flavor and shelf stabilizers and emulsifiers. And we are just now starting to realize that these are having a major effect on the diversity and the composition of our gut microbiome. Specifically, there's been a mouse study demonstrating that synthetic emulsifiers are decreasing gut diversity and also decreasing short chain fatty acid production. In addition, we are eliminating a lot of our dietary fiber. So fiber is the prebiotic that our bacteria in our gut like to eat. And if we are eating emulsifiers and shelf stabilizers and sugar instead of fiber, we are not feeding our gut bacteria very well. We're seeing decreased diversity secondary to this. And it's also worth mentioning here that our farming and our industrial agriculture practices are also decreasing bacteria and fungi in the soil. And one of the ways that we get bacteria and fungi into our body is it's on our fruits and vegetables that we are consuming. And so decreasing the diversity in the soil is resulting in food of poor nutritional value and decreased gut diversity in our intestines. So, and these practices include tilling the soil every year, erosion secondary to not using cover crops, and the use of pesticides and the use of fertilizers. Those kill microbiologic community in the soil. So what can you do about it? The most important thing that you can do about it is to eliminate these ultra processed foods from your diet. Are you going to be able to eliminate all of them? Probably not, but you can start to decrease, just become aware and decrease your intake of these. Second, you need to eat more fiber, and you need to eat a diverse array of fiber. So traditionally humans ate about 100 grams of fiber today. Currently, we're recommending about 25 to 30 grams of fiber per human per day, but most humans are getting about 5 to 10 grams daily. Ideally, you want to eat 30 different fruits or vegetables a week. And so to achieve this, we make a little bit of a game of it in my house where we have competitions to see how many different plants and vegetables and nuts and seeds we can get into our diet. Third, fermented foods are an incredible source of probiotics, prebiotics, and postbiotics. And so these are all things that make your intestines happy. Please check out my video on fermented foods if you want to learn a little bit more about what fermented foods are. And I also have a freebie on my website, katrinacoultermd.com, where you can go and download that and try to incorporate some sort of fermented food into your diet every day. The last bonus thing that you can do, which we will do a whole video on, but sneak preview, is movement increases microbial diversity in the microbiome. And so increasing your daily movement, and this does not have to be hard workouts in the gym, it can just be a little walk around the office, will also improve your microbial diversity and hopefully help regulate dysbiosis and reset the ratio to one that is happy and promotes great health management, optimal insulin release, and satiety when you are full. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, hit the like button, share this with a friend, and I'll see you on the next video.